Hi, friends, I'm Bryn,
And I'm Blaine.
and this is a special mini episode of Friends Who Crime.
Do, friends who crime.
Today is a special mini episode update on the Idaho college murders case that we covered back on episode 12. It's Baby's first bonus episode. My brother Blaine is back on the podcast with us. Hello, Blaine.
Hello, Bryn.
We've been keeping track of the case, and by that I mean I've bombarded Blaine with Instagram posts as everything unfolded.
It's true.
Yep, recently there's been big news surrounding the case. If you haven't listened to the original episode, I highly suggest going back and listening to that one because a lot of this update kind of won't make sense otherwise. So go listen to episode 12 if you haven't yet. Before we get into what just happened in court, I want to take a minute to go back and just remind you what this case was all about. A little refresher, if you will. So here's the quick rundown. On November 13th, 2022, 4 students were brutally murdered in their off-campus home in Moscow, India. Wow. In their Idaho.
Moscow?
Not in
Moscow?
Moscow, India? It's Idaho. Okay.
It's Moscow too.
Is it
It's
Moscow?
it's Moscow.
It's not Moscow?
No, it's Moscow.
Wait. Was I saying
I
Moscow in the first one?
I don't know. I watched a documentary on it last night, and it's definitely pronounced Moscow.
Well, that's good. I'm going to start that sentence over. Okay. On November 13th, 2022, 4 students were brutally murdered in their off-campus home in Moscow, Idaho. Their names were Madison Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. They were found stabbed to death in their sleep, 2 on the 3rd floor of the home and 2 on the 2nd, and the scene was horrifying. No signs of forced entry, 2 roommates were unharmed and didn't realize what had even happened for hours. The entire town was also put on edge. For weeks, there were no arrests. People were scared, rumors were flying, and online sleuths were running wild. Then in late December, police arrested Brian Koberger, a 28-year-old PhD student in criminology who was living just a few miles away in Pullman, Washington. He'd been studying serial killers. Literally, serial killers. And the arrest was based on a few key things. His white Hyundai Elantra caught on surveillance, cell phone data that allegedly showed him stalking the area beforehand, and the biggest piece, his DNA found on a knife sheath left at the crime scene. At the time, he pleaded not guilty. The trial was set for August 2025, and prosecutors were seeking the death penalty. That's where we left off. Are you remembering all of this?
Oh, for sure. It's actually kind of crazy since I've dove into the trenches on this one to find out some of the crazy things that were happening within the town. As in, like, he came back to the crime scene afterwards. Like they have phone traces of him coming back to the crime scene. And one of the guys that he had gone to school with was interviewed, and they're like, "Yeah, it was his oh shit moment. Like he knew he left the sheath there." So he went back and was like, "Oh my gosh, it's still there. Is there a way for me to get in?" He couldn't figure out a way to get the evidence out. So that's an interesting theory. There's also this really weird interaction that was happening on a Facebook group. I don't know if you heard about this. A guy was coming in and like asking a bunch of questions that were like really creepy of like, hey, what hand do you think the killer stabbed them with? And like, what do you think was his motive? And these questions that this person in this group chat or in this Facebook group was asking, when they pulled the reports that he was studying at Washington State, it matched a lot of the questions that he was asking randomly, like on Reddit and that sort of thing. So they believe, or there's a theory that he jumped into this Facebook group, started asking questions, trying to get close to the case again. as a way to continue studying and like analyzing people and seeing if people could figure out. It's really creepy because as soon as he was arrested, those questions, the guy stopped. He was no longer in the group. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Crazy.
I had not come across this. That is really creepy.
Yeah. There's we were watching a documentary on it on Amazon Prime, and it dove into some of this stuff, and I was like, that's nuts. How much more creepy this guy gets the more you dig into who he is and what he was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit about how creepy he was in court. So here comes some updates on all of this. Fast forward to July 2nd, 2025, just a couple of weeks ago. In a Boise courtroom, Kohberger pleaded guilty to all 4 murders and to felony burglary in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. The sentence: 4 consecutive life sentences without parole plus 10 years for the burglary. And, yeah, the plea is official. He also waived his right to appeal, so this is it. No trial, no death row. When the judge asked him, "Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?" he said, "Yes." That's it. Just yes. Cold, flat. He could have been ordering coffee. Just yes. Which I thought was so creepy. I was like, dude, like, if you're pleading guilty to this, like, have some sympathy for the families and, like, at least show some form of remorse or regret, but absolutely nothing.
Yeah, he's not the most emotional person. Just from the interviews and things like that you, like, cops caught him because he got pulled over twice, right, on his escape route, if you will, and even on the body cams of the cops, like, he was just awkward. Like, he's not a social person. Everybody who's talked to him has said, like, he's just a weird dude. He's super smart, is what everybody said too. It's like in like some of the studies that they were doing or research that they were doing at Washington State in his PhD program, he was always the one who was asking the questions that pushed them towards like solving the case that they were studying. So they're like, this guy's a really smart guy, but just people were like, we're not surprised that his name is attached to this, which is, it's a horrible thing to say, but it's like,
right,
the guy's just a weird kind of creepy dude.
Yeah, and it is so often people will, like, in retrospect, they'll take things like that and be like, oh, well, this guy was really weird, and in class he would say this thing, which is totally a normal thing, but now that he's murdered people, now it's weird, right? And it's like in the context of things. Mm-hmm. But in this case, knowing his history and what the people around him said even before he was arrested, it's just he's just icky. He's an icky guy.
Yeah, he is.
His written confession, which is public, you can find it online, and I'll post it on our Instagram. It doesn't include any motive. It's very clinical. It doesn't say why he did it or if he was targeting someone specifically, what the plan was. He admits the stabbings were premeditated and that he used a K-bar knife, and that's about it. So naturally, the big question is why now? Why take a plea deal this close to the trial? One theory floating around, and this has made the rounds on news sites and on Reddit, is that he wanted to avoid the death penalty, specifically because of Idaho's new law that allows execution by firing squad. I'll say it again for the people in the back. Firing squad. Firing squad. Idaho reauthorized it in 2023 as a backup method when lethal injection drugs aren't available, and there's been talk that it could become the primary method in 2026. And I was talking about this with coworkers, like, would we rather, obviously we don't want to be executed, but if we were going to be, would we rather do, like, the injection drugs, or would we rather die by firing squad? And it was a very split, because there's a lot of things that happen with the lethal injection, like you could be dead physically, but your brain isn't dead, or like something goes wrong, or, you know, whatever it is, technical difficulties, and you're like stuck in this limbo. Whereas with firing squad, you would die pretty quickly and you probably wouldn't actually suffer at all. So it was really split. I was surprised by that. I was like, I would not want to get shot to death.
I don't know. I think I'd rather be euthanized than
Right?
shot to death.
That's what
And
I'm
I
saying.
think that's just more of like I don't know, maybe there's like a more at peace sentiment to injection, right? Where you're just like kind of laying there and you're like, I'm just going to, you know, die.
Yeah.
Versus like standing in front of people with guns pointed at you, being like, cool, you're going to shoot me like an animal.
Right.
And I'm going to die here. And
Right.
yeah, I would rather go by lethal injection than by firing squad for sure.
I think of it, I put it in the context of like my pet, right? Like we euthanize pets when it's time. We don't shoot them. And I think, right. Well, I mean,
I'm
let's
kidding,
say
I'm
most
kidding,
of us
I'm
don't
kidding.
shoot them. You should not shoot your pets.
Disclaimer.
We do not promote that. Oh, absolutely. No, no one from the legal team has confirmed that the death penalty by firing squad was a factor, but it makes you wonder, did he take the deal because he didn't want to be shot to death? Could be. Another rumor that's been circulating for a while is that he was fixated on or stalking one of the victims, possibly Madison, and that the others were just collateral damage. We talked about that a little bit in the first episode. Again, total speculation. Nothing in his confession or the official court documents confirms that, and he hasn't explained his motive at all. He may never explain his motive at all. The families, as you can imagine, have had very different reactions to the plea deal. Madison's parents said that they completely support the deal. They said it brings a sense of finality and that they're ready to start healing. On the other hand, Kaylee's family is furious. They said they were blindsided by the plea, that they weren't given enough warning and weren't included in the decision-making process. They've been incredibly vocal and called the whole thing rushed and disrespectful. Legally, prosecutors can make a deal like this without family approval, but emotionally, it's kind of a different story.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were surprised at the plea deal. Because I think the last time we talked and everything that I was reading, everyone was like, I can't wait for the case. Like, that we want to hear how this is presented. What more are we going to find out? And then I feel like that was kind of taken away, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, now we're never going to know, and we're only going to know what they allow us to know, versus like a trial by jury where evidence will be presented. So I think a lot of people were frustrated, upset by it. I think ultimately the guy's going to go away, right? He's no longer going to be a threat, but I think a lot of people are kind of like, he got off too easy for what he did, especially in that community. And I can only imagine, as a parent who's feeling a lot of emotion, that type of reaction of, absolutely not. We weren't consulted. We didn't know. This is too good for him. I get it.
Yeah, I just imagine like feeling like you weren't included, even if you don't necessarily agree with the plea deal, that's one thing, but not being included in the decision is another thing. But at the same time, justice has been served. So I see both sides.
Yeah, I think it just is a matter of what you felt justice was. And
Right.
if you're like, cool, like at least we know, and he's going to go to jail for life, and other people are like, I wish he was dead. He doesn't deserve to be in society, right? So it's just a mindset. Personally, I wish there would have been a trial, right? I really wanted to see it, and I really wanted to hear what both sides presented to like prove that it was Koberger versus like the other side trying to prove or cast doubt that he was involved in any way. I was interested in seeing that. And from an entertainment standpoint, which is not the way you probably should look at these things. I feel like we're missing out on an episode, right? It's kind of like they just cut it short.
Yeah, it's like, where's the drama?
Right. I need it. What am I supposed to do in my downtime now, right?
Right. This update episode should have been longer, but no.
So, really, viewers and listeners, they took this from you. They took that away from you, because now we have to do this episode much shorter.
So what happens now? Koberger is scheduled to be sentenced on July 23rd, which at the time we're recording this is only 9 days away. At the hearing, the judge will formally hand down his sentence, which has already been agreed upon, and the victims' families will give their impact statements. We might learn a little more then, but don't expect the big courtroom drama. Koberger himself doesn't have to speak, and honestly, it doesn't seem very likely that he will. After that, he's headed to prison for the rest of his life. No parole, no appeals, nothing else. And while we probably won't hear much more from him, you never know. He could decide to write a statement or give an interview someday, but for now, this chapter is closing. Obviously, that's a little frustrating that we may never know why, and we may never know any kind of a motive. Because that's my big question. That's what's frustrating me, is like, I want to know why. Like, forget about the courtroom drama. That would have been cool, but I just want answers, and I'm sure the families of the victims want answers, and we're not going to get them. Especially, like, at least right now, we're not going to get them.
Right. We're also not going to know why he made contact with somebody in the house, didn't do anything to them, and walked out. Why they didn't call the cops until like noon? Like it was in the middle of the day. The day after it happened. Like there's so many questions that are still unanswered that were like, maybe that would have come out in the court case. Maybe we would have learned a little bit more. I felt like a lot of those questions would have been answered, or at least maybe alluded to, or given us some sort of insight to the many conspiracy theories and things like that people were generating. And now we just get to sit and be like, oh, well, justice was served, but I still have questions, and I still want to know.
It's still a mystery. It's still a huge mystery. And it's not the ending that we wanted necessarily.
Game of Thrones, right? Yeah.
Right. But like big picture, it's a good thing. You're so right. It is like Game of Thrones. Not the ending we wanted, but overall a great series.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Let me just unhumanize this real quick and make it something that's not sentimental or emotional in any way.
The case has always been one of the hardest for me to wrap my head around, not just because of how brutal the murders were, but because of how senseless they feel. 4 young people had their whole lives ahead of them, and they were taken in the middle of the night for reasons we may never fully understand. So yeah, the justice in this case doesn't look like a courtroom showdown, which we all secretly wanted. In this case, it looks like 4 life sentences and families who are left to find closure however they can. And that has to be good enough for now.
I think, like we've said, big picture, what needed to happen has happened, right? We speculated in the last episode that it sounds like Koberger's their guy. Just based on the evidence that we know. It was just a matter of, what the punishment was and could they officially prove it, in hopes that in the trial we learned more than what we know today. From that standpoint, it's frustrating, but for the families and those affected in the community, I'm sure there is a huge sense of closure. And okay, this is over. I know one of the fears they had was, is it somebody in our community? Like, should we be scared? So when they arrested Koberger, they were happy that it wasn't somebody close by. It was somebody who lived on the East Coast. That's the best that we're going to get, and we have to be happy with it. and that community has to heal and figure out how they move forward.
I also, my last thought here before we close this out is I think he realized he was fucked in court. Like, there was no way he was gonna win that. And I think prosecution knew that as well. They knew he knew. And so they were like, all right, here's a plea deal. We're done.
Yeah. And there would have been so much publicity on that trial.
Yeah, it was going to be live streamed.
Yeah. And I'm sure the security measures on that entire thing would have been drastic, of making sure the right people are in the right spots at the right times to make sure that, an angry community member or whatever doesn't get too outraged, or,
Right.
Someone disrupts the trial in some way. So I could imagine it was going to get pretty messy. So it's probably for the best, but again, I feel like we ended on a 10 episode series on episode 9.
Yeah.
But we're given a glimpse into what the conclusion was at the end of the episode. So but it's good. Overall, it's good. And I'm glad that they caught, or that he pleaded guilty, because we kind of all knew.
So, everyone, thank you for listening to this update. Blaine, thanks for being here. If anything else breaks, especially after the sentencing, I'll be sure to put together another update for you guys. I'll also be posting on the Friends Who Crime Instagram story if anything new comes up. And that will be more immediate than an update episode. So go follow Friends Who Crime on Instagram if you want those quick updates. Again, Blaine, thanks for hanging out with me for this one again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super fun. Always a pleasure.
And to all of you listeners, take care of yourselves, think about the victims, not just the crime, and as always, remember, friends don't let friends commit crimes. Bye!